This is the story of an American criminal who took police hostage using nothing but a fake gun. At Crown Point Prison, one of the most secure jails in America, this inmate broke through security with a wooden pistol. He openly robbed several major banks, yet the police could do nothing. He even prepared his escape right in front of the police, and still they failed to see his plan. To the police, he was a headache, but to the public, a hero. People even preserved his blood like a prized possession. But why? Who was this prisoner? Let's find out. In Indiana, USA stood Crown Point Prison, considered one of the most secure jails in the world. Officials claimed escaping from this prison was not just difficult, it was impossible. The facility was secured with heavy iron bars, strict guards, and multiple locked doors. Not even a bird could move without permission. But America's most wanted gangster, John Dillinger, reduced the prison's pride, security, and reputation to dust. One morning, John woke up calmly and pulled out a fake gun inside the jail, throwing the entire facility into chaos. At gunpoint, with that wooden pistol, he not only controlled the prison's authorities but also overpowered the guards, escaped with a fellow inmate, Herbert, and fled the prison. He even stole the sheriff's brand new Ford V8 car. In just moments, a cunning mind and a fake gun had stained the reputation of America's most secure prison. It became known as one of the greatest escapes of its time, where prison security was pierced by nothing more than a wooden weapon. And the man behind it was John Dillinger, a mischievous mind since childhood. For the first time, he made his mark on June 22, 1903, when he was born in Oak Hill area. John was born to John Wilson Dillinger and Mary Allen Lancaster. John also had an elder sister named Audrey Dillinger. John's father was a very strict man who always wanted to keep his children disciplined. His strictness grew even more after Mary Ellen's death. Yes, when John was only 3 to 4 years old, his mother passed away. After that, his elder sister Audrey raised him like a mother. But sometime later, to care for the children, John Wilson remarried in 1912. His second wife managed the household well and paid special attention to both children's education. In school, John was seen as a brilliant student, especially passionate about baseball. But during this time, teachers began noticing changes in his behavior. Once disciplined and focused, John started changing, skipping school, stealing classmates' belongings, and picking fights over small issues became his habit. His academics collapsed, and at age 16, he dropped out of school. He had escaped education but not yet his father's control. John Wilson often beat him, wanting him to grow up honest, hardworking, and capable, not a criminal. But John had already stepped into a path from which there was no return. He realized that as long as he depended on his father, he would remain under his authority. So to gain freedom, John began searching for a job. At that time, most young Americans were engaged in military training for World War I, so John found work easily and got a job at Indianapolis Board of Trade. Besides this, he also worked as an assistant in a machine shop called Reliance Company. Now John had freedom, money, and distance from home, but only for a while. Soon after, his father Wilson moved the entire family to Mooresville. John was again forced to attend school, but by now his interest was no longer in studies but in theft. Just a year later, in 1922, he was arrested for stealing a car. After this incident, his girlfriend also distanced herself. To escape the case, John enlisted in the Navy in 1923. But even there, he didn't change. Within a short time, he deserted and was declared a fugitive. During a ship docking in Boston, John was granted 24 hours leave. It was just a short break, but for John, it was the perfect chance to escape the Navy. He hated the life there, so after only a few months of service, he fled and was discharged dishonorably. At age 20 in 1924, he returned home in Mooresville. For desertion, he served 5 to 6 months in jail, but even that punishment wasn't enough to change him. After release, he resumed living life his own way. His family arranged his marriage to a 16-year-old girl, Beryl Ethel Hovius, hoping he would reform, but marriage changed nothing. He spent his little time with Beryl. His nights were spent roaming with friends, partying, and drinking. He failed as a son and as a husband. What happened next shocked the entire family. One night in September 1924, John was drinking with friends when a former convict, Ed Singleton, approached him and proposed robbing a local grocery store. John agreed immediately and hid with Ed in an alley. John knew well that every night the shop owner carried the day's cash home in a bag, and that same alley was his route home. Unaware of John's plan, as soon as the shop owner entered the alley, John pulled out a gun and pressed it to his temple. Then, using a cloth wrapped tool, he struck him hard to knock him unconscious so he couldn't scream. After committing this brutal act, John and Ed took about $50, roughly around $900 today. This robbery became the first, biggest, and most defining foundation of John's criminal life, opening the doors to the underworld and to prison as well. Soon, police learned of the robbery, and after gathering evidence, they arrested John the very next day. He was charged with robbery and assault with intent to kill. He was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison. He was also fined $200. That is 4 times the robbery amount. So the robbery earned him nothing, only punishment and prison. John was sent to Pendleton Reformatory, where life was extremely difficult. Like many inmates, he tried escaping early on. About a month into his sentence, he hid among supplies, trying to sneak out, but the plan failed. Guards caught him during inspection and locked him back in his cell. Still, he didn't stop. That same year, he attempted escape 3 more times, all unsuccessful. To the guards, he became a headache, but to fellow inmates, he shined like a hero, because seeing his courage to attempt to escape again and again, other inmates felt highly motivated and attracted toward him. During his prison time, John made several friends, all with dangerous criminal records. Among them were Homer Van Meter, Russell Clark, and Harry Pierpoint, notorious names involved in major bank robberies. As the friendship grew, they became a bigger headache for the guards. Handling them was getting difficult, so prison authorities transferred Homer and Harry 200 miles away to another Indiana prison. John lost his friends, and then his wife divorced him too. She didn't want to spend her life with a criminal. John felt deeply alone. To distract himself, he turned to baseball, his childhood favorite. With daily practice, he became so skilled that prison authorities said he could play in the major league. Days passed. John wanted release, even if on parole. He applied, but the judge rejected it due to his misconduct and repeated escape attempts. So John requested a transfer to Indiana State Prison, where there was a baseball team he wished to join. The request raised no suspicion, so in 1929 he was transferred to Indiana State Prison, reuniting him with Harry and Homer. The three decided that once John was released on parole, he would help free them too. Helping them plan was one of the era's biggest robbers, German-American bank robber Herman Lamb. He too was planning escape and promised his support. So all of them began waiting for John's parole, while meanwhile Herman taught his associates bank robbery techniques known as the Lamb technique. After a long wait, May 1933 arrived, and John was released on parole. But when he stepped into the outside world, everything had changed. America was in the Great Depression. Nearly 30 million were unemployed, 2 million were homeless. Crime was rising fast. Robberies filled newspaper headlines, often praising the robbers' tactics. Reading this, John got an idea, if not famous, then infamous. He returned to Mooresville with Harry's men and began preparing. He practiced the Lamb technique to rob banks. Before targeting a bank, John would scout it, sometimes posing as an official to study operations. One witness said John posed as an NRA officer from Washington and told the chairman he was surveying banks statewide. During robberies, John earned the nickname Jack Rabbit because he would dramatically leap over the counter and shout boldly, "This is a robbery." He showed no fear of the law. Within months, he had looted around $300,000, though some say it was closer to $900,000. Between 1933 and 1934, John and his gang robbed nearly 24 banks across the Midwest and several police arsenals, committing over 8 bank robberies in just 1 year. They even raided police stations, stealing machine guns, rifles, ammunition, and bulletproof vests. During clashes, they fought police and killed 2 officers, yet the public began seeing John as a Robin Hood figure. Media outlets portrayed his crime like a thriller film. The more famous John became, the more embarrassed the federal government and FBI felt. A dangerous killer was roaming free, and law enforcement seemed powerless. Soon, the FBI declared him public enemy number one and placed a reward on his head. Media, police, and citizens all joined the hunt. In January 1934, John and three associates were arrested in Tucson, Arizona, after a hotel fire exposed their hideout. John had been hiding there from police, but during the chaos, a firefighter recognized him and alerted authorities. He and his gang were taken into custody. Police also recovered $10,000 from him, stolen in a recent East Chicago bank robbery. He was also accused of killing Officer William during that robbery. To face trial for that murder, he was brought back to Indiana. On January 25, 1934, John was transferred to Crown Point Lake County Jail, considered one of the strongest and most secure jails of its time. Authorities publicly declared no one could escape from this prison. Security was tightened, extra guards deployed. Sheriff Lillian Holy was confident her jail could hold John. She told the press that if John tried anything, deputies with machine guns stood ready everywhere. After his arrival, the jailer and prosecutor even posed smiling for photos with him. In one picture, prosecutor Robert Estill rested a friendly hand on John's shoulder, later seen as embarrassing. John joked, smiling, "I'll escape from here too." Everyone laughed. Weeks later, it became true. Sheriff Holy, overconfident, kept him in a local jail instead of a state prison. But John was already planning his escape, right in front of the guards. They failed to notice. It said that John quietly carved a piece of wood in his cell. Guards mocked him, calling him John the Whittler. He acted like he was just passing time. In reality, he was shaping a wooden pistol, the key to his escape. He reportedly colored it with black shoe polish to make it look real. It had no trigger and no proper grip, yet he used it to intimidate guards and escape. But was it really a fake gun? After his escape, this question dominated headlines. Lake County Deputy Ernest Blank claimed John had a real gun smuggled in for him. Later, it surfaced that Ernest may have helped John and was arrested for aiding the escape, though released for lack of evidence. Security failures were heavily questioned, and John himself mocked the system, boldly claiming that yes, he had carved the wooden gun with his own hands, almost mocking the police. After his escape, when his cell was searched, police found a wooden washboard piece with a section missing. People believed he'd shaped his gun from it. The FBI later confirmed this, saying he'd intimidated officials with a fake gun, a huge embarrassment for law enforcement. After this revelation, his escape dominated headline news and newspapers and later films. A gangster had fooled the most secure prison with a wooden pistol. But how? To understand this, we go to March 3, 1934. That morning at Crown Point Prison was calm. As usual, inmates were brought down for exercise. John and 15 others were walking on the second floor. 2 deputies were distributing soap for inmate baths. When they searched John, he appeared normal, busy exercising. Suddenly he stopped, pulled out a pistol hidden near his waist, and pressed it to Trusty Adams' back. He threatened, "Don't move or I'll shoot." The guards froze. At his command, both deputy sheriffs raised their hands and surrendered. Now in control, John barked orders, "Hand over your weapons, keys, and clothes." The guards complied, giving him everything. He even snatched a real pistol from one guard. Now armed with a real weapon, he locked all the guards inside a cell and then forced Trusty, using him as a shield. John began controlling the rest of the prison staff. Any guard that encountered was threatened at gunpoint and locked inside a holding cell. John got lucky. 24-hour duty officers Herbert Birch was fast asleep in his chair. John quietly approached, pulled machine guns from the rack, and pressed one to Birch's temple. The moment Herbert woke, he surrendered. John locked him inside a cell. In total, John held hostage at least 14 jail staff, including the warden and a fingerprint expert. Now the guards were prisoners, and the prisoner was free inside. After securing control, John freed fellow inmate Herbert Youngblood, a man sentenced to death for murder. For him, this escape was a miracle. John even offered another inmate a chance to escape, but he refused, saying fearfully, "No, You're too high profile. Police will hunt you down. Anyone with you will be caught too." John laughed, mocked him as a coward, and moved on with Herbert. At this point, they carried 2 submachine guns and 2 pistols, all taken from guards. But the strongest link in the escape remained the fake wooden gun, the weapon that started it all. With a fake gun, John had acquired real guns. After locking staff inside, he even showed them the wooden pistol, boasting proudly, "Look, this is what fooled you all." With his cunning mind, John had shocked the entire prison and breached its security. Taking Herbert along, he moved past one gate after another, escaping right in front of them. In fact, the prison had 5 thick iron doors, each secured with heavy locks, but John had the keys taken from the guards, so he unlocked every single door and finally reached the main gate. A bunch of keys hung from his shoulder, machine guns in his hands. He opened the main door and escaped with Herbert. But the challenge wasn't over. Escaping the prison was only half the battle. He still had to evade police. Outside the prison, John spotted a nearby garage filled with cars. He rushed in and shouted at a mechanic, "Hey kid, which is the fastest car here?" The mechanic pointed to a 1933 Ford V8 belonging to Sheriff Lillian Holy, parked there for servicing. John aimed his gun and took control of the mechanic too. Now his small crew was ready. John, inmate Herbert, a hostage guard, used as a shield, and the mechanic forced to drive. Soon the sheriff's blue Ford was speeding down the roads, with John Dillinger sitting in a stall inside. Within minutes, they crossed out of Indiana into Illinois. Near the town of Petone, John released both hostages, the guard and the mechanic, unharmed. Because John's war wasn't with innocents, it was with the law. Now only John and Herbert remain in the car. Back in Indiana, Sheriff Lillian Holy received the call that John has escaped. Furious, she began shouting because she had claimed no prisoner could ever escape that jail. But John not only had escaped, but also taken jail staff hostage and stolen Sheriff Holy's car. As the news spread beyond prison walls, the city erupted. The most secure jail had been humiliated. Newspapers turned the incident into a thriller story. Police faced ridicule. Guards had been captured at the point of a fake gun. Sheriff Lillian was furious. She declared angrily, "If John returns to me, Judge, you won't be trying him, you will be trying me." Meaning if John faced her again, he wouldn't survive. She would deal with him herself. 2 days later, she announced she wouldn't seek another term as sheriff. While her statement made headlines, John's escape remained the talk of the nation. John, proud of it, was now alone. He and Herbert had traveled together in Illinois, then split ways. 2 weeks later, on March 16, 1934, Herbert surfaced in Michigan and was killed in a police shootout. He had feared the death penalty inside prison and met death after escaping too. Some reports said he told police John was nearby, but later he denied it. One escapee was gone. Now all focus was on John, the main accused. Police and FBI across the country united to capture him. Pressure mounted. The hunt had intensified, while on the other hand, the prison's weak security was becoming a joke, because never before in American history had a prisoner escaped using a fake gun. But John had done it. Police administration faced heavy embarrassment, yet amid his clever plan, John made one small mistake, which became the biggest reason for his capture. Perhaps if he hadn't made that mistake, he'd never have been caught. As they say, no matter how clever a criminal is, he slips somewhere. While escaping, John had stolen a Ford V8 car officially registered to the Lake County Sheriff. In haste and overconfidence, he fled in it, crossing from Indiana to Illinois, where he abandoned it. By doing so, he violated the National Motor Vehicle Theft Act, which made transporting a stolen vehicle across state lines a federal crime. Until then, his crimes, robbery, theft, murder, were mostly state matters. The FBI had limited authority, but once he crossed state borders in the sheriff's car, the case shifted fully to the FBI. Now they had full jurisdiction to hunt him down. Soon after the escape, the stolen sheriff's car was recovered in Chicago. Federal court filed charges of vehicle theft and interstate transport. Days later, a federal grand jury indicted John, granting the FBI legal authority to capture him. Orders were issued to the Chicago FBI office, granting full freedom to capture John. This was the time when federal crime laws in America were being tightened. After the 1933 Kansas City massacre, the US government realized paperwork alone couldn't stop dangerous criminals. They needed a force ready to act with weapons on the ground. So in 1934, several new federal laws were passed. Bank robbery was declared a federal crime. Federal agents were allowed to carry weapons. Kidnapping or transporting a stolen vehicle across state lines also became a federal offense. These changes meant criminals now had to evade the entire federal system, not just state police. Under these new rules, John became the primary target of nationwide manhunt. The reward for his capture was increased. His posters were spread across America. Now conditions were no longer in John's favor. Earlier, he escaped state police easily. But now FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover's full federal machinery was after him. By April 1934, his gang was nearly broken. Many close associates were dead or arrested. Harry Pierpoint, Charles Makeley, and Russell Clark received death or life sentences in Ohio. Meanwhile, Babyface Nelson, Homer Van Meter, and John Hamilton were killed or badly wounded in police encounters. John was gradually left alone. The empire of fear he had built was weakening. His glittering criminal career was nearing its end, but the sensational Crown Point jailbreak refused to die down. One headline was everywhere: "Most wanted criminal escapes with a wooden gun." Every news channel and newspaper ran the same story. The Chicago Daily News featured it on its front page on March 3, 1934. Reports carried a mix of anger and astonishment. On one hand, they blamed loose law enforcement. On the other, they praised John for escaping a high-security prison without firing a shot or hurting anyone. Breaking Crown Point was no small feat. He had hundreds of thousands from bank robberies but couldn't spend it openly. Police and the FBI were hunting him in every state, so John went underground, living quietly like a fugitive. He contacted his girlfriend Billy and hid with her in Minnesota hotel. Meanwhile, his remaining associates formed a new gang, including fugitive Babyface Nelson and other notorious robbers. By late March, they robbed banks in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and Mason City. After each robbery, police pressure tightened further. Then on March 30th, 1934, Billy was surrounded by police in Minnesota. A gunfight broke out, later called the Lincoln Court Apartment Shootout. John escaped, but Billy was captured. It was a huge blow. His last close partner was now gone. Gang members were also being arrested one by one, so John moved to Chicago, hoping to hide in the crowded city. In May 1934, with a friend's help, he paid a surgeon a large sum for plastic surgery, so no one could recognize him in Chicago. Not only that, he even tried to erase his fingerprints. Acid was used to burn the skin, but some marks still remained. He stayed hidden for a long time to heal from the painful procedure. After recovering, on June 30th, 1934, he robbed the Merchants National Bank in South Bend, Indiana, his final robbery. He was accompanied by Babyface Nelson and Homer Van Meter. During the heist, the gang clashed with police. Some were injured, others killed. John was badly hurt but escaped and fled to Chicago. He hid in the house of a landlady named Anna. Anna, originally from Romania, was involved in prostitution. She feared government deportation. To save herself, she struck a deal with the FBI. She would hand over John in exchange for avoiding exile. The FBI agreed. On the night of July 22, 1934, Anna secretly informed agents that John would soon go to watch a movie with a woman and Anna would accompany them. She wasn't sure which theater, Marlboro or Biograph. She also said she'd wear an orange skirt so agents could identify her. After this tip, FBI agents and police took positions outside both theaters. Around 8:30 p.m., John arrived at the Biograph Theater with Anna and another woman named Polly. The film Manhattan Melodrama was playing. Police identified Anna by her orange skirt, later calling her the lady in red. Orders came from above, no shooting inside the theater to avoid risk to public. They would wait until John came outside and surround them. If he used his weapon, police were ordered to fire without hesitation. Around 10:30 p.m. as the film ended, John stepped out with the two women. Agents began following him. Officer Melvin lit a cigar, the signal to move in. John grew suspicious. Plainclothes men were watching him. He understood the situation and tried to escape. He reached for the pistol in his pocket, but before he could draw it, FBI agents surrounded him and opened fire. One bullet hit his neck, two struck his face. He still tried to run, but soon collapsed on the ground. The man who once scared police with a fake gun was now silenced by real bullets. Within minutes, a crowd gathered. Police rushed him to Electra Brothers Hospital, but at 10:50 p.m., he died on the way. When news spread, people rushed to the shooting site. Many wiped his blood with handkerchiefs to keep as souvenir. The next day, headlines read, "Public Enemy Number 1 is dead." His death saddened many, but law enforcers finally breathed in relief. John was buried at Crown Hill Cemetery in Indiana. Thousands attended his funeral to pay their last respects. Later, 27 people were charged for sheltering or helping him. Some were convicted. Months later, his associate Babyface Nelson was killed in a police encounter. Gradually, the gang was wiped out, but the Crown Point jailbreak remained one of the most famous events in American crime history. That's all for today. If you like this story, like, share, and subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon. Thank you.